Hello, friends, brothers, and sisters in Christ at Mission. My name is Ragnar. Many of you know me since I worked at Mission Baptist as Outreach Director 2013, 2014. That's been a few years now. For those of you who were part of Mission at that time, you'll remember the really strange part about that was that I lived in New Brunswick and flew in regularly to instigate some outreach initiatives in various forms. So since that time, I've continued to live in Fredericton, New Brunswick with Sue, my wife, and Jacob, our son. All in all, we are doing well. Sue works at the Fredericton Multicultural, teaching English ESL to immigrants. Jacob's now in grade 12, and in a normal time, his life would revolve around schoolwork, and the sports he likes is rugby and wrestling and football, but all that's kind of changed this year as your lives have changed as well. Me, I'm working and have been working since that time on Gospel on the Web, which is an initiative to create Bible content for those who may have other religious backgrounds. So think Islamic or Hindu and Jewish or so on, and get it translated and then run Google Ads to draw a fair bit of traffic to these different websites. So as you can see, I've grown a beard. It's just a little easier to trim once a week than to shave every day. Um, but if you think about working online, which I was doing since 2015, not a lot of my work has changed since the pandemic started, but my extracurricular activities have less variety. So normally I would try to get out there and do things and help out at church with some outreach things that we were doing. I would teach ESL. I was helping out or leading an after school kids program in the neighborhood, and kind of all those things are shut down. And the gym is curtailed as well. And so now our Sue and I were out skiing today. We can ski because we can get outside away from people and so on. So I know all our lives have changed a lot since in this last year. Well, Pastor Don and the elders suggested I sharing a devotional thought. So that's what I'm going to do. But first, little background on what I started doing a couple of years back. So um, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I was feeling that, I've always had a kind of trying to maintain a discipline of reading the scriptures and letting it speak to me on my own. But it was getting a little stale. So then I said, well, maybe I should try to change it up a bit. So what I did is I picked up these books. I don't know, maybe they come backwards to you, but they're the basics of biblical Greek and Muntz. And so it's just like Greek for laymen. And so I started doing that and learning a bit of Greek. And then I thought, well, I'm going to apply that by reading my interlinear Greek Bible. So for the last couple of years, I've been reading my NIV interlinear. I'm not sure if that comes out backwards on your end, but so and then I read a little bit, and then because it's Greek, I spend a fair bit of time in my dictionary, and so kind of the rhythm that I do is I get up early in the morning, and I'm just going to read a few verses in my interlinear, understand some of the words, and do that by my wood stove early in the morning with my cup of coffee. I really have really grown to love it. Um, what I've found is that things go very slow, but there's a richness to it that I wouldn't have caught otherwise. So I'm going to share a couple of things that I've kind of ruminating about that I've been reading in the last couple of days. So what I've done is I've read through the smaller epistles and two of the gospels, and then I thought, okay, let's tackle the big ones. So I did Romans, and now I'm in First Corinthians. And so what I'm going to do is normally though when I do this, I just read kind of on paper, book old format because I'm on the screen for work, so I just needed something different. So normally I'm reading all on book, but I can share some things on the screen here. So that's what I'm going to do, and share screen and go here. So I'm going to start here. So I've been reading in First Corinthians, and uh, Paul's been going through some of the problems they've been having, and one of the problems, the first problem he brings up in this book, is that these people are arguing with each other. There's strife and division, and it's based on who they're going to follow, Paul or Apollos or Peter. And so I'll read the English, and I'm going to start. This is kind of I'd read a paragraph maybe in the Greek, but I read this part the other day. So 3, 5 to 9, I'll read. He says, "Is Apollos important? No. Is Paul important? No, we are only servants of God who helped you believe. Each one of us did the work God gave us to do. I planted the seed of the teaching in you, and Apollos watered it. But God is the one who made the seed grow. Now, I've read those verses many times over the years. And so, this maybe 2 days ago, I read it for the first time in the Greek. And here's what you can see in the Greek. Hopefully, you can see this. And it's the word planted. And here, what you can do is you read that. So here's the word that they've translated planted, ephitusa. And if you click on that and you click on that number here, you will see that futuya, that's kind of the root form of the word. And what's interesting about this is I found it's a derivative. So it's related to this word fuo. That's the root of it. And fuo is right here, and it is to bring forth, produce, to spring up, grow. So what I found interesting is, in the word plant doesn't really connect to the word, the action of planting doesn't really connect to the thing you're planting. But here in the Greek, it's like Paul is not planting a dead thing. He's not planting stones. He's not planting twigs. He's planting something that has an innate energy, an innate ability to spring forth, to grow up all on its own. He is planting a living thing with innate power, innate ability to give life, and it comes out. I never really seen it that way before, because I can use the word he planted some stones, but but no, he's planting things that bring forth life. So that was an encouragement to me that when I'm sharing the gospel, I'm sharing something that's living and active, has got an active ingredient. And you should be encouraged too as you're sharing it. You're not sharing just like a dead truth. You're sharing a living truth. It'll grow up and spring up on its own. So that was just something that struck me as in a way that I'd never seen it before, just by looking at these Greek words, plant, which is related to the kind of the root, to thuo, to grow up or spring up. And then the next day, I'm reading a little later in the same chapter. Actually, I'll go back here, and we're going to go down here. And it's this part here that we know about God's temple. And Paul will say, you should know that you yourselves are God's temple. God's spirit lives in you. If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy him, because God's temple is holy. You yourselves are God's temple. And what I noticed when I kind of looked at that in the kind of the Greek, here we have it in the Greek, a couple of things. First of all, the word temple, there's two words you can use for temple, and he uses the word naon, which is like the holy of holies, the inner shrine. The other one is hieron, which often is in the Gospels, which is the whole building, the outer court, the inner court, and so on, but not necessarily all the holy parts. But here, the word he uses, the inner sanctuary, the Holy of Holies. And the other thing that I noticed is the word you. You is second person. So sometimes I'm always thinking, we all have a personal relationship with God. God indwells me, but it's not just me, like here, you in the singular. God's indwelling all of you collectively, because you're second person plural. So the you in English, I can say you, like, and you can't tell if the you I'm speaking to is one person you or many people you. But in other languages, including Greek, you can hear the difference. And so it's a plural person you, you collective. And so God is among them as a collective, as a community. And it just made me think of, in the Old Testament, God tabernacled among them, as a community. And then you think of Revelation, Jesus walks among the church. He's among them as a community. And so it just helped strengthen my idea that when Jesus lives, doesn't just live in me, though that's true, but he lives in us as a community. And that's why Paul actually, it makes sense of this whole passage, because these people who are arguing back here about following Paul or Cephas or Apollos, they're destroying by their arguments that community, and they're destroying, therefore, God's temple. The sin that they're about is destroying that collective community. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. It comes out to me a little differently than it would in the otherwise. Today I was reading this morning in 1 Corinthians, and I moved to the next chapter 4, and I was reading that this morning, and here is how he starts out. Uh, this is what people should think of us. We are servants of Christ. We are the ones God has trusted with his secret truth. It's interesting the word he uses, I just find. So here we see it in the Greek. Uh, it's the word servant here is huperetas. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but if you click on this, the what it means is, and I was reading this morning in my book, it's literally it's under hypo, like hypoglycemic. You're too low, and you're the rower. You're the slave on the deck below who's doing all the rowing, as opposed to the boss or the captain who's in charge of the rowers. So you're the man who mans the oars on the lower deck. So that's the word that Paul uses. Like, I can't think of a lower way, hard work at the bottom of the totem pole. And that's the word that Paul uses as the servant, and how contrary that is to mine and our inclination to want to be at the front, at the top, to be the captain of the ship. And so that just gave me thoughts to reflect on my own. Do I have that same attitude as Paul? Will I be willing to be the rose oarman at the bottom of the ship and do some of the hard work? So those are some thoughts that have come to me, that have encouraged me um, in the last couple of days, related to God living in us as a community, the gospel being an active ingredient. We don't plant a dead truth in people's hearts. We plant a living truth. And then this idea of servant is to be someone who's kind of real lower class here. Um, and so that's hopefully something in there can be of encouragement to you. I know not everyone's going to be into the Greek, but for those of you who might appreciate that, um, I hope that it'll help you in some way. And may God bless you. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to share with you. Until some other time when maybe we can see each other in person. And